Buenas a todos y bienvenidos al episodio número 23 de Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, donde vamos a terminar el tribunal de esta gente. This court will now reconvene for the trial of Miss Lana Sky. Emma didn't come back. Si os acordáis, en el episodio anterior Emma se fue un poco a tomar por saco. Y ahora aquí estamos. Allow me to call the next witness to the stand. The officer in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day of the crime. Witness, please state your name and occupation. I'm just a man, same as you, wandering the trails of civilization. Occasionally helping the elderly cross intersections when needed. Yes, we get it. Oh, I know, you are patrolman. As for my name, if you listen hard enough, you can hear the howling wind calling it out. To be exact, it's Jake Marshall, Your Honor. Howling wind? I've never heard Edgewood described that way before. Now, Mr. Marshall, let me ask you something. You were in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day of the crime took place? Is this correct? According to the papers, partner. What do you mean? A desperado's soul is as boundless as the desert sands. No paper can sum it up. Maybe it's best we get on with this quickly. Please share us with your testimony of the day of the crime. In plain old English. Not, oh, amigo. Day of the crime. My job was to keep a wary eye on that bone orchard. They said I was supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style. Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway. If I remember right, I was at the street side saloon at the time it went down. I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail. I can't say I particularly care for your attitude. I can't say I care for your bird, but you don't see me complaining. Wait a minute. What do you mean by 2 security systems? I mean the security cameras and the ID card reader. I reckon even a cowboy like you knows about those. Yes, well, what about the fingerprint activated logs on the evidence lockers? Fingerprint activated logs? What kind of newfangled doohickeys are those? You're not being very helpful. He's not that good with machines or with following orders. Everyone's got their weaknesses. Now, don't they, Mr. Prosecutor? This one seems like trouble. Okay, Mr. Wright, he's all yours. Y voy a comer, vamos. Day of the crime. My job was to keep a wary eye on the bone orchard. ¿Qué significa esto? I just made sure nothing moved in the security camera and monitored that room so still. Even time dies in there. I was just a caretaker who entered the recordings. You entered them? Videos of nothing aren't that useful. When the time would come, I'd erase the tape. If nothing unusual is recorded, tapes are to be erased every 6 hours. Each time I'd erase the tape, it felt like I was erasing a part of my life. This guy has a flair for the dramatic, but it isn't going to do him any good. So, and actually, you don't physically enter the evidence room. But you make your rounds on the day of the crime, right? And you heard the word I said, partner? I told you that ain't my style. I'm afraid I don't understand. No desperado, I know let's rules get in his way. No desperados, I know join the police force. No entiendo nada de esta gente. So, Officer Marshall, on the day of the crime, just between you and me, I didn't set foot in the evidence room that day. There was a rubber glove stuck in the victim's locker. Do you know anything about that? Sorry, partner, can't say I do. I haven't been in that script in weeks. How does a guy avoid being fired? Good question. You used to be a detective, so you've used the evidence room in the past, correct? Of course. Back in the day, my locker was a goldmine of evidence. And yet you didn't know about the fingerprint locking mechanism? Sorry, partner, I ain't good with machines. I couldn't even tell you how a bike works. That's quite incredible. The sensor on the locker handles cannot be seen. It's well known that some detectives are unaware of their presence. Now that you mention it, then you said something like that too. It doesn't seem like this is relevant to the crime. Can you tell us what you were doing when the crime took place? It was at a street side saloon. What are you doing in a place like that? I was eating spaghetti. Not even angels stick. Lunches can beat that parlor's Bongol stepu pasta. Do you mean to tell us you abandoned your police duties to eat some noodles? Not all desperados eat tacos, partner. That's not what I mean. I hope this has at least taught you a lesson. That's strange. It's unusual where this is usually where Edward says. Did you not won a race this year? I'm just an innocent traveling man, so you're out of ammo. It's time I hit the trail. Out of ammo, officer? That's right, partner, or you call it evidence. If you plan to pin me down to this crime, then you better draw. Otherwise, you're wasting my time. My steel horse is waiting to carry me back west into the sunset. One thing seems clear. Despite being responsible for guarding the evidence room, the witness doesn't appear to have seen anything. Texas don't take orders from anyone. Everyone knows that. But your superiors don't. Okay, I have a trump card up my sleeve, so I best keep it my cool. Before I use it though, I'd better up they ain't. Aquí es donde voy a guardar, como siempre, para asegurarme de que no me quedo sin tries y tengo que reiniciar muchas cosas. Voy a chequear. Incident. No, vamos a chequear esto. Perpetrators: Joe Dark. Crime: serial murder. Sentence: death. Victims: Edward Jones, Jason Knight, Edith Kirby, Rachel Moss, Jeff Bates, Neil Marshall. Trial data: Head prosecutor Miles Edgewood. Witnesses: Lana Skye, Emma Skye. Investigation Task Force, Executive Investigator Damon Gang, Lana Skye. Head investigator Bruce Goodman. Investigator Jake Marshall, Angel Star. Vamos a meterle ya. Officer Marshall, doesn't it strike you as odd? That is, you being called in to testify like this? After all, you were in the security room at the time of the crime. And yet you tracked me down here. Explain yourself, partner. It's quite simple. You left a very large trail behind at the scene. Or to be exact, a handprint. Isn't real good, partner. Like I said, I'm the caretaker of that crib. I pay my respects. That is, make my rounds about once a month. It's only natural my fingerprints would be in there. Only wish it were, officer. But you see, your fingerprints were covered in blood. What's the meaning of this? Your blood-stained fingerprints were on the crime of the scene? The blood was wiped away. However, a luminol test clearly revealed this. Well, Officer Marshall? It seems to me there ain't a person in this room with a head on his shoulders. I take it you have an explanation then, Officer Marshall? About the bloodstained fingerprints? Very well, you may begin your testimony about your fingerprints. A ver qué me dice. Bloodstained fingerprints. Like I said, it's only natural for my fingers to be in that evidence room. One of them just happened to be at the same place as the bloodstained handprint. The murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance. The bloodstain and the fingerprint are completely unrelated. Or didn't you know the murderer was wearing gloves? See? We had nothing to do with. ¿Cómo sabe que el murderer... ¿Cómo sabe que el... ¿En qué momento se ha dicho que el asesino llevaba guantes? A ver, hay varias cosas que no me han terminado de decir. De aclarar. How do you know that? I may be alone, but I still do my job. I keep up on the reports. There was a bloodstain at the scene, though, to be left by the murder. That's right. It was found in the extension locker. However, no fingerprints were detected on the handprint. Oh yeah, I think we tried that too. So that would mean the murderer wearing gloves happened to place their hands on top of Officer Marshall's fingerprint. That's the only logical conclusion. Vale, voy a meterle desde el principio, como siempre. How do you pay your respect once a month? Yeah, that's right. That and one more thing. That locker happens to be mine. You mean? Yeah, I mean what I said. That's a locker I used when I was a detective. The locker I still use. All that's in there now, though. It's a heap of broken dreams. I see. I'd be strange if my prints weren't all over that locker. Apparently, his fingerprint data was never removed from that locker programming. I've been using the fingerprint lock all this time without ever knowing it. Vale. Are you starting to get the picture, partner? The picture? This seal of blood in the desert is just food for the buzzards. There's only one reality, and that's this. The security tape. So long as my trail isn't in there, you can't say otherwise. Getting us anywhere, Mr. Wright? Venga. So it wasn't in the video, right, partner? What do you mean by that? You want to tie me down to this crime, isn't that right, partner? If so, that video is the only direct evidence you have. But that video is next to useless. It's full of blind spots. Blind spots, places you can't see. The camera's panning back and forth. The floor isn't shown. If someone was familiar with the camera's position, they could leave the room without being caught on tape. Time for your speculation, Mr. Wright. But Mr. Wright, if you can show us evidence in this video that indicates Officer Marshall was present, please do so now. We're walking right into Officer Marshall's trap. I better try and find out a little more information. Si vamos al principio del todo, no hay nada. Si nos fijamos aquí, y ahora sí que hay esto. Madre mía. Bring our attention back to the security camera. It's a mistake. I'm afraid you will soon not forget, Officer Marshall. The days are short in Texas, and so are our tempers. Could you sum up what you have to say in 8 words or less? Very well. You can clearly be seen in this video. Hostia! Exactly 8 words. Not bad, partner. The key lies in a certain locker shown in the video. That locker with the white cloth sticking out was the witnesses, I believe. Now then, let's rewind the video a bit. Venga, hay luces y todo, es como si fueran fuegos artificiales, tú. Oh, the white cloth, it's gone. What's the meaning of this, Officer Marshall? When the crime took place, the white cloth wasn't there. Then it suddenly appeared. There's only one explanation. Officer Marshall, you were in the evidence room at the time of the crime. What's more, you opened your locker when the camera was turned away. Order, order! Hold your horses! Sorry, partner, but you got the wrong man. Madre mía. So what if my locker was opened? That doesn't mean I'm the one who opened it. The murderer needed to hide something, so he opened the locker and stuck it in. It's not my fault he happened to choose mine. Why is everyone staring at me like I'm a wounded man? This guy isn't just playing dumb. He really doesn't know. I hate to rain on your parade, but you're the only person who can open that particular locker. Oh yeah? I called your bluff. You say open the locker, now prove it! And then the prints can unlock it. Boom! A fingerprint sensor? ¿Cómo? ¿Cómo? Boom! We talked about this earlier today. The lockers can only be opened by the detectives they belong to. What kind of crazy talk is this? Well, Detective Gumshoe did mention something about this. In any case, the locks aren't that obvious. There are even some people on the force that don't know about the fingerprint locks. So, Sheriff, what do you have to say in 8 words or less? Only got 1 word for you, partner. No! Order, order, order! Witness, explain yourself. If this is a joke, it's the worst I've ever heard. I assure you, this is no joke, Officer Marshall. Now then, please tell us what you were doing in the evidence room at the time of the crime. Ole! Please answer the question. What is he now? A bullfighter? Un torero. That's alright, Officer Marshall. I believe we can figure the rest out from here. We can? Have a look at these floor plans. There is no place for someone to hide in the evidence room. Yet Officer Meekins didn't see Officer Marshall. If that's so, then where was the witness? Seems Mr. Wright has an answer. That's right, the only possible conclusion. Well then, let's hear it. Where was Officer Marshall? I was standing right here. So Officer Meekins didn't notice him standing there. That's almost as credible as Meekins' warp's theory. Ay, soy gilipollas. No había entendido la pregunta. Officer Marshall was standing right here. ¿Qué está pasando? Déjame guardar que aún la voy a liar pardísima. Que no sé. That's where the victim, Detective Goodman, was. McCowan. Correct, unless the man wasn't Detective Goodman. Pero si pensaba que era el killer. McCowan. I believe the victim in this video is Officer Marshall. It was you dressed up like Detective Goodman. But that's proposed by Officer Meekins. Witnessed the detective at the crime scene. Once he saw the man's face, he'd known for sure. May I point out that Officer Meekins did not know Detective Goodman? He also testified about the man's reaction when confronted. When I entered the evidence room, I asked him to show his ID, sir. Yes, and how did he respond? He said, "Put the knife on me." Oh no! Something about the officer's story puzzled me. If the man had his ID card, why didn't he just show it? Yes, he would have needed it to enter the evidence room, so he must have been carrying it. The answer is simple. He couldn't show it. As you can see, Detective Goodman's picture is on his card. Oh, I get it. If he showed that, his cover would have been blown. Officer Meekins would have realized the man wasn't Detective Goodman. Do you have anything to say to this, Officer Marshall? You've got quite an imagination, partner. We got a term for that. It's called circumstantial evidence. Yeah, he's still denying it. You have to do better than that to break a detective. Unless you have hard evidence proving I dressed up as the victim. I can say I particularly care for your uncooperative disposition. I can say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Well, Mr. Wright, do you have any evidence proving, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Officer Marshall dressed up as the victim? Well, who am I kidding? I don't have anything like that. I can see the fear in your eyes, partner. Seems like you're the one who couldn't take the dessert hit. Yeah, this can't be happening. It's obvious he's the one. What can I do? It looks like your lack of experience has finally been exposed. I'll pass on to you what someone told me when I was just starting out. When you've run out into a wall with no place to go, return to the basics. The basics? For me, that would be what Mia used to tell me. Phoenix, try to think outside the box. It shouldn't look for proof that Officer Marshall was in disguise, but rather I should look for evidence that came out about because he was in disguise. Why do you think this locker was open in the first place? What do you mean? There's no reason for Officer Marshall to open his locker at the time of the crime. Yet he did, despite the chance it might be discovered later, as it has been seen. He didn't plan to open his locker. According to the defense argument, Officer Jake Marshall dressed up as the at the time of the crime. Then, after the crime was committed, he opened his own locker for some unknown reason. Para dejar el disfraz. The fact that a white cloth is sticking out of the locker seems to indicate that he opened it in order to put the cloth inside. So, just what exactly is this piece of cloth, perhaps? The video is the key to all our unanswered questions and evidence, so this will be my only shot. Me cago en el puñetero vídeo, tío. Creo que lo he visto, ¿eh? Mira esto, papá. ¡Pum! For some reason, you disguised yourself as Detective Goodman and entered the evidence room, though I don't know to what end yet. Madre mía, bro, ¿qué esta lluvia? Yet? However, something unexpected happened. Officer Meekins sparked in on you. When asked to show your ID, you pulled a knife on him. However, Officer Meekins panicked, and the white coat you were wearing was soiled with blood. A bloody white coat? You couldn't just walk out like that. So you hid the coat in your locker? Not bad, partner. Wow. Wow, eh? Now then, Officer Marshall, are you ready to tell us the truth? Looks like I underestimated you all. I hope you're happy now, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago. If you were only half as persistent then as you are today, we all wouldn't have to be here now, would we? Officer Marshall, tell the court what you did. All of it, alright? Seems the time has come. La confesión, let's go. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. I stole Detective ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out and managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on the camera. There wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. So the supposed victim was really you. But there's one thing I still don't understand. Traces of a large quantity of blood were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered then, how could it be? Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hand. My guess is he is the donor. It was way too much blood for such a small donation. Hay que presionarle a este pavo en todos sitios. Me cago en. When you say it, you mean you didn't have to ask, partner? The SL9 incident. 3 years have passed since that case was closed. I was going to completely end with the transferal that day. Not if I have anything to do with it. That incident's not over. But what did you hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room? When a case is closed, only that case lead detective can look through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at it myself one more time, no matter what the cost. I don't care what anyone says, partner. That case is mine. Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation. Why does he care so much about it? There was no last chance, that's why I stole that ID. Why did you disguise yourself as a technical woman? I was carrying out the evidence transfer. I'd be arrested for stealing evidence, which wouldn't get me anywhere. So you did it for the security camera and Detective ID's car? I stole that morning of the incident. So that really was why Goodman started filling out that lost item report. I returned his ID card. I left it on the floor in the prosecutor's office parking lot. The ID card I found was left there by Officer Marshall. So essentially, you managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight. What do you mean, partner? I mean the fingerprint activated lock, of course. No matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have been able to open that locker yourself. But he could because a rubber glove just happened to get stuck in the door. That means that Goodman must have opened the locker before Officer Marshall. You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off? Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being in the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. I didn't think anyone would actually come in during that short time. Officer Meekins certainly is a one-in-a-million type person, mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to show his ID. I'll have to think a little bit more about his race this year. When did I ever get so much influence? Anyway, he threw himself at me and I ended up cutting him slightly. I'm sorry it had to turn out that way. With my knocking him out and everything. By the way, what happened to your knife? Oh, you mean this one? I don't know what to say. So you knocked Officer and managed to escape. So you did your research beforehand. Those who go into the desert unprepared don't live long, partner. I didn't think it would make a difference though. The security tape is erased every 6 hours. If all had gone as planned, no footage would have been left. However, you bloodied your coat in your struggle with Officer Meekins. If someone was in the security room when I came out, the jig would have been up. I opened my locker and stashed it in there. What was Officer Meekins doing during that time? What else? He was sleeping like a baby. So, what you're saying is on that day, there wasn't any murder in the evidence room. But somewhere else, yes. Well, and that door. But the blood found at the scene certainly indicates a crime took place. What are you, blind? The victim shown on that tape is me and I'm not dead yet, partner. So you stole the evidence from the locker? Actually, no I didn't. Why not? When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone. What? Mr. Edgewood, where is that evidence? It's still missing, Your Honor. The Goodman's locker was already empty. Someone else stole the evidence. Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing? Fire away, partner. It's a free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer. Why did you do this? Stealing detective ID, injuring a police officer. There is no small offense. Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. It can't just be forgiven with a simple cut in salary. Not that salary cuts are ever a valid solution. Like I said, this isn't your case, this one is mine. And I'll do anything it takes to get an answer I'm satisfied with. The witness has an unusual amount of zeal, let's hear more. And you know why? But that case was solved 2 years ago, wasn't it? That's the reason the evidence was stored in the evidence room. Joe Dark was convicted for his crimes. One thing I can say for sure is he deserved his sentence. And remember the Joe Dark case. It involves serial murders, didn't it? I don't intend to complain about how it turned out, but there's something that still bothers me. Something went down at that trial, something no one will talk about. What happened? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. Why is he so concerned with this incident? Neil Marshall, su hermanito, murió. ¿Puede ser? Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the SL9 incident. Sounds like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner. Now the SL9 incident file here. The name Marshall is mentioned in here. In a list of murder victims. Neil Marshall. Are you related to this man? Neil Marshall? Yeah, I'm sure you've heard the name. 2 years ago, he received the same lousy prosecutor award you got. What? A prosecutor? He must be talking about the King of Prosecutors award. Now I remember. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the SL9 case before I did. That's right, he was killed. And the case fell into your hands. But what's his relation to you? He was my brother. He was investigating the murders with Damon Gann, the then Deputy Chief of Police. The group of detectives I was part of worked under them. We were desperate to prosecute the killer. There's Joe Dark, también conocido como Joe Mama. My brother fought Dark and was killed. That was the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That was all we needed. Que sad. He was arraigned and incarcerated. The case was finally closed, at least according to the public records. What do you mean? My brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Dark. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight. And that's it? That's your reason for your insane actions? There's more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try to hide it, you can't fool me. Well, at least one thing's for certain. Now we know what happened at the police department on the day of the crime. That was the last day the SL9 case could be reopened. Not satisfied with its resolution, Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence. Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, so he rendered him unconscious and fled. Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. No murder took place at the police department that day. The things that happen by chance never cease to amaze. At exactly the same time as the murder at the prosecutor's office, this fake murder was going on at the police department. Chance? It's got to be more than just that. So if no one was murdered at the police department on the day of the crime, that means the murder in the prosecutor's office parking lot was the real one, which in turn means only one person could have committed this crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye. But wait, a verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial. Which is why we examined the incident at the police department today. But there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. There yet remained the mystery of the simultaneous murder at the police department. It seems to me, this boy's got the draw on you, partner. Of the mysteries at the police department have been resolved, no doubt about it. Our sole murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lana Sky, and the testimony of one Miss Angel Star is completely incontestable. If you have a response, make it a single word or less. I rest my case. It's worth, bro. It seems this trial has reached its conclusion. There's no room for doubt. Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time disproving the alleged murder at the police department. There's no doubt what I proved today is true. The apparent murder on the security camera tape really was fake, but didn't realize that would end up proving Lana guilty. Now then, the time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant. Hold it! Your Honor, wait! Emma, the defense has an objection, a scientific objection. Right? What do you mean, Wright? Mr. Wright? Are you this girl's guardian? Your Honor? Yeah, in a sense. Please, Your Honor. All I'm asking is for a minute of your time. Please hear me out. Venga, el vídeo se está terminando ya. Mr. Edgeworth, please. I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute? I'll give you 3. Madre mía, generoso Edgeworth. I was kind of in a shock. I mean, finding out the SL9 incident referred to Joe Dark killing. Now that she mentions it, the names of both Sky's sisters were in that file. But that's when I figured it out. I mean, what Officer Marshall was trying to do that day, so I knew his fingerprint had nothing to do with the crime. That left only one thing, the other handprint. You mean the traces of blood found on Detective Gansh's locker? But no fingerprint were found on it, right? No, but I figured if I examined it scientifically, I'd be sure to find a clue. So I ran over there and looked at it again. So you did find something? No. Sorry, I guess I'm not much of a scientific investigator after all. Is that all? Please don't be mad. I'm just a high school student. And I'm just an attorney. But Mr. Wright, those traces of blood are the only clue we have. If we can't find something wrong with them. Please, Mr. Wright, you're a professional. If anyone can save Lana, it's you. Me, oh boy. Time's up. Now then, Mr. Wright, with regard to the incident at the police department, does any reasonable doubt remain? It appears the defense is troubled by the other blood mark. Looking at the floor plan, a handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this? Mr. Wright, I'm sorry it can't be more use, but still, you can't find anything wrong with that blood mark. Lana will be... Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day. Yes, Your Honor. If I ever needed to concentrate, it's now. Tengo 2 tries, así que... Could there be something I'm missing? I object! This handprint left the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction. Only thing that seems clear is your grasping, Mr. Wright. You've been staring pretty intentionally at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them? Yes, this is strange. Something is missing. Missing? You mean something hasn't been drawn on there? Yes, something that, when drawn, will completely change the meaning of the blood mark. Let's pray the defense isn't simply trying to buy time. Very well, Mr. Wright. Este de aquí, al fin, lo vamos a utilizar. ¡Loco! What about that piece of plywood? The Blue Badger, mascot of the police force, defender of truth, guardian of proof. Explain yourself, Mr. Wright. Please look at the floor plans on the crime scene. The Blue Badger is not here. So watch what happens when we put him in. This is where he was dancing at the time of the crime. Well, that's right. So long as the Blue Badger is dancing here, it would be impossible to place a handprint at this spot on the locker. ¿Pero cómo? So that means, what does that mean? It means it can't be done. We're saying blood traces were undeniably found on that locker. Don't look at me, I didn't put it there. Mr. Wright, think it through scientifically. Emma! On that afternoon, Officer Meekins was the one who brought the blue badger to the evidence room, right? After he put it down, it would be impossible to leave a handprint on that locker. So that must mean this blood mark was left there before the blue badger was brought in. Just one moment, I will not allow such far-fetched balderdash in my courtroom. May sound farce, Your Honor, but it's only possible explanation. On February 21st, in the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape taken by the security camera. Officer Meekins got his hand from which a trivial amount of blood fell. The problem is the other time that was deleted by accident, erased, terminated. Someone bled prior to the struggle shown on this tape. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered. That's ridiculous. I refuse to accept your absurd claim. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be a fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found on the locker. So then, assuming this murder you purport really happened, when did it take place? I demand you show evidence that proves it when it occurred. Vamos a enseñarle el ID. Prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was posing as Detective Goodman, another incident took place in that evidence room, and that's right. The blood marks on the locker proves this. Very well, then tell us, when did this first accident occur? Esta de aquí. Plop. Plop. Por aquí. 420, ¿no? If the crime scene took place inside the evidence room, then the killer would have had to enter it, and in order to do so, an ID card would have been required. Oh, the car record! Officer Meekins brought the Blue Badger panel into the evidence room at, let's see here, 4:50? Vale, that's it. If the crime took place before the time, then it would be 4:40. Miles Edgeworth, mi hermano. Just what have you done? I never would have figured you had the nerve, boy. Drop the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out it couldn't have been me. No, I ain't getting it. I'm afraid I don't understand either. It's clearly from the luminol test that blood was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. I would have had just 10 minutes to murder the victim, carry his body away, and then clean up the blood. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible. That would mean the crime must have taken place before Mr. Edgeworth entered the evidence room. Entonces este 77777. Talk about a lucky number. But wait, that doesn't make sense. How could Detective Goodman have entered the evidence room? Since there's no record of his car being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with 7. Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP. Find out whose ID number is 77. That's 17 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID car, at least at present. What? Explain yourself, son. The ID number belongs to someone with the rank of captain or higher. Someone who is a so-called executive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire into such a person's identity. But that's ridiculous. Just how? I'm not finished talking, Mr. Ryan. There is one situation in which we can be granted such authority. If an official charge filed against an executive is accepted. An official charge? You're all alike, aren't you? With your cover-ups and your forgeries. That's how the prosecutor's office operates. I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate if you would keep your slander to yourself. Slander? Is it okay? Let me ask you a question. Yes? No. To her, the defendant sitting over there. Your own little executive. Lana? Don't be stupid. She's been charged with murder. Of course, we've looked up her ID number, and it's not many sevens. Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's what I want to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident. There's a 9, yeah. Answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really only use legitimate evidence? Y ahora le preguntan a Lana, pero hostia puta, tío, que esto no para. You need the witness to repeat this question, Chief Prosecutor. I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for the trial. At the time, we felt the powerless need of the law. At least, I did. Lana? I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law. But before I realized it, we were the ones being suppressed by the law. Defendant, just what are you saying? I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor. During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look me, an investigating that crime, in the eye and say that you did? Chief Prosecutor, you didn't. I don't have to, Officer Marshall. Why won't you answer him? Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to, in order for him to get the verdict he deserves. But Lana, even if it involved forging evidence. See? That's what I'm talking about. No. No! Order, order! Madre mía, tío. Lana's remarks, the chaos in the courtroom would have to wait until the following day. To be continued, madre mía. Lana, la que más liado en un segundo, tía. Madre mía. Día 3, investigación, venga, va. Otro día más, venga. Hay más, venga. No, esto se termina en un momento, no pasa nada. Bueno, yo voy a descansar un rato y luego a ver si sigo grabando. Ya veremos. Ahora sí, muchas gracias por ver el episodio. Espero que os haya gustado, que lo hayáis disfrutado. Y nos veremos en la próxima con más y mejor. Hasta la próxima. Adiós.